Hi everyone, we are going to continue our lecture by discussing types of forces. And in here, forces can be divided into several types based on several categories. The first category is based on its interactions, and then based on its distributions, and also based on its line or plane of action. So it's based on its interactions, based on its distributions, and based on its line or plane of actions. Let's go through it one by one. Based on its interactions, forces can be divided into two, contact force and body force. So contact force is caused by the interactions between two or more bodies. So for example, if I have two cylinders right here, right, and then it rests on a surface, and there's a contact in here between those two cylinders, and if I have to separate the body, okay, and try in order to try to draw the free body diagram, there will be a contact force between, let's call this cylinder A, cylinder B. There will be a contact force between cylinder A and cylinder B right here, okay? And definitely, there's also a contact force when the cylinder is touching the surface right here, so that there is another force right there, okay? And let's call it NS, which is contact force between the bodies and the surface, okay? The second types of forces based on its interaction is body force. So body force is caused by a position of the body within a force field. So what is force field? So one type of force field is gravitational, and another type of force field is magnetic. So whenever a body, right, a body is located in the force field, for example, this pen right here is located in the force field, uh, and in this space, particularly is the gravitational force field. This body, there will be a force in this body, and that force is basically a gravitational force. Okay, so if you would like to consider the cylinder over here, and definitely, and it's located on Earth, right? There will be a force which is basically the weight of the cylinders, right? Okay. So those are the types of forces based on its interactions. And the second category is based on its distributions. So based on its distributions, forces can be divided into two, concentrated and distributed. Okay. Concentrated force, uh, in here, I take an example of a weight of a person on a bridge. It can be considered as a concentrated force. It's because basically the contact surface between the person in here, okay, and the bridge is relatively small to the overall area of the bridge right there. Okay, okay, okay. So the contact surface is basically the foot of the person, right? And that contact surface is basically relatively small to the area that I shaded in green, which is the top surface of the wooden beam in here, okay? With that in case, right, since the contact area is relatively small compared to the overall surface of the beam, we can consider that the weight of that person's on the beams can be considered as a concentrated or point force. Okay, and then the second type of forces is distributed forces, and one type of these distributed forces is hydrostatic force, and you have learned in physics. For example, in here, if I consider a dam, right, and then this dam is trying to block water behind it, right? And if I can draw a two-dimensional drawing, so this is the dam and this is the water behind the dam, and we have learned that the distribution of the forces of the water or the hydrostatic pressures is triangle, and basically this triangly distributed force is a type of distributed force. Okay, Another type of distributed force is the weight of a structures. For example, if you consider the weight of this beam, so when I try to sketch the beam over here, the weight of the beam is basically are uniformly distributed. Okay, and it can be calculated knowing that we have the weight density, uh, the weight density of the beam, and also the cross-sectional area of the beam. Okay, so the last category is based on its plane or line of action. Uh, the type of forces in this category, the first one is collinear forces. It's a force that is acting on the same line. It can be acting on the same directions, or it can be acting on the opposite directions. Another type of forces is coplanar forces, which is a forces that is acting on the same plane, right? And in here, the force can be directed to any arbitrary directions. Okay, and the third type of forces is what we call as a concurrent forces, and basically it is a specific case of coplanar forces in which all of the forces are acting from the same locations. And in this case, we have force F1, force F2, force F3. They're acting based on the same point, which is point O right there. Okay, and the last type of forces is what we call as a couple force. So basically, couple forces consists of two forces, right, that have the same magnitude, but they are opposite in direction. And separated by a perpendicular distance. Okay, so those are the definition of couple forces, and as you can see that a couple force also a specific case of coplanar forces. Okay, I think that's it for today. In the next lectures, we will try to learn how to perform factor operations on coplanar forces, and in particularly, we are going to consider doing a factor operations on a set of concurrent forces. Okay, and in here we will try to learn how to decompose the forces into its Cartesian components. Okay, see you guys in the next lecture.